Hello and welcome. It is 2026, and precisely 6 hours ago, the Space Telescope Science Institute in Baltimore received a data packet that has effectively frozen the control room. I'm not talking about a blurry pixel or a theoretical model. I'm talking about a high-resolution spectral analysis from the James Webb Space Telescope's near-infrared camera, or NIRCam. And what they found defies the standard model of cometary physics. For the last 3 months, we have been tracking object 3IATLAS as it crosses the orbit of Mars. We assumed it was a rogue comet. We assumed it was ice and rock, but at 8 o'clock UTC this morning, JWST turned its gold-plated mirrors toward the object, focusing specifically on the infrared spectrum. The data came back, and it showed a spike at exactly 3.8 microns. Picture this for a moment. In the vacuum of deep space, far from the sun, a comet should be cold. It should be thermally inert in this specific band. A 3.8 micron signature typically indicates one of two things: extreme, localized heat, or a very specific, complex chemical process involving heated hydrocarbons. And when I saw the raw spectroscopy data myself, I had to pause, because nature does not usually produce a spike this sharp, this isolated, and this intense from an object that is supposed to be a frozen relic of the early solar system. The background temperature of space is 2.7 Kelvin. 3IATLAS is currently showing surface hotspots exceeding 400 Kelvin in the dark. Think about that for a moment. This is an object 200 million kilometers away from Earth. It receives barely any sunlight, yet it is glowing in the infrared like a beacon. NASA's initial report, labeled Anomaly A7, puts the probability of this being a natural geothermal vent at less than 0.04%. Why? Because comets do not have molten cores. Comets do not generate internal megawatts of power. And let that sink in. We are looking at an object that is generating its own heat signature, and it is doing so at a wavelength 3.8 microns. That is notoriously difficult to produce naturally without a massive external energy source. When you look at the histogram, it's not a curve. It's a needle. It's a precise monochromatic emission. In my decades of analyzing astrophysical data, from string theory to black hole thermodynamics, I have learned to trust the numbers. And the numbers here are screaming that our definition of comet is wrong. This isn't just a rock tumbling through the void. This is something active. This is something that is interacting with its environment in a way we have never documented in the history of astronomy. And the most unsettling part, this 3.8 micron spike, its pulsing, is not constant. It appeared held steady for exactly 19 minutes and then vanished, only to reappear with the exact same intensity. Nature is messy. Nature is random. This looks like a cycle. This looks like a machine turning on. And if you think that sounds impossible, wait until you hear what the ground-based observatories in Chile just confirmed. This discovery did not happen in a vacuum. If this were just one telescope, even one as powerful as James Webb, we might dismiss it as a sensor glint. We might call it a calibration error. Skepticism is the heart of science. But what happened over the last 48 hours has systematically dismantled every skeptical argument we have. Because the moment JWST detected that 3.8 micron thermal spike, a global alert went out to the deep space network, and the confirmation came in waves. First, the ALMA observatory in the high desert of Chile turned its 66 radio antennas toward the coordinates. ALMA looks at the universe in millimeter wavelengths. It sees the cold dust, the molecular gas. At 14 o'clock UTC yesterday, February 21st, ALMA confirmed the impossible. They didn't just see the object, they detected a coherent spectral line of exotic hydrocarbons surrounding it. Then, the Keck Observatory in Hawaii joined the hunt, using their adaptive optics to cancel out atmospheric turbulence. They look for visual confirmation of outgassing. Usually, when a comet heats up, it creates a tail. It vents gas physically. But Keck found nothing. No tail, no coma, no dust clouds. Let me put this in perspective. We have an object that is glowing with the heat of a pizza oven, 400 Kelvin, yet it is releasing zero gas. It is hot, but it is not evaporating. In thermodynamics, this is a contradiction. If you heat a ball of ice and rock to that temperature, it sublimates. It creates a cloud. 3IATLAS is naked. It is a solid, defined, heated object moving through the dark. NASA's NIRCam detected the heat. ALMA detected the surface chemistry. Keck confirmed the lack of a natural coma. 3 independent sources. Different methodologies. Identical, impossible conclusion. Think about the precision required here. To maintain a surface temperature of 400 Kelvin at that distance from the sun, you need an internal energy source. A comet core usually holds the ambient temperature of space. It should be frozen solid. To generate that kind of thermal output, you would need a nuclear decay process far more active than anything we have ever seen in a natural asteroid, or you need a power plant. The numbers don't lie, but that was just the first anomaly, and the data kept stacking up. On February 20th, 2 days ago, astronomers noticed a shift in the object's trajectory. We call this non-gravitational acceleration. Oumuamua showed a tiny bit of this in 2017, but 3IATLAS, the shift was 0.08 degrees against the orbital plane. That might sound small, but in celestial mechanics, it is massive. It implies a force was applied, a push. And then yesterday, the rotation stopped. For 3 months, 3IATLAS was tumbling. It had a chaotic rotation period of about 8 hours. Then, over the course of just 45 minutes, between 16 o'clock and 16:45 UTC, that tumbling slowed down and stabilized. The light curve flattened. Pause and realize what this means. To stop a mountain-sized rock from spinning requires an incredible amount of torque. In physics, angular momentum is conserved. It doesn't just disappear. Friction didn't stop it. There is no air in space. Gravity didn't stop it. There are no nearby planets. The only way to stop a tumbling object that quickly is to apply an equal and opposite force. Thrusters, gyroscopes, or a technology that manipulates inertia itself. The data stream from JWST is now showing us the surface composition in that 3/8 micron band. We are seeing absorption lines that correspond to refined metals, not ore, not raw iron mixed with silicate. We are seeing purity. The spectroscopic signature for titanium and aluminum alloys is appearing in the data. These elements exist in the universe, yes, but they are usually locked inside rocks, oxidized and dirty. The spectral lines we are seeing now are sharp. They suggest processed material. When you combine these factors, the unexplained heat, the lack of a gas tail, the sudden stabilization of its spin, and now the signature of refined alloys, the probability of this being a natural rock drops to effectively zero. We are not looking at a freak of nature. We are likely looking at a wake-up call. I have spent my life studying the theoretical physics of advanced civilizations. We categorize them by their energy consumption. Type I, Type 2, Type 3. We hypothesize how they would travel. We build models of their propulsion. What JWST is seeing right now fits the model of a probe breaking into a system. It fits the thermal profile of a heat sink radiating waste energy after a high-velocity burn. And the scariest part isn't the heat, it's the rhythm. Because 6 hours ago, when that 3 8-micron spike appeared. It didn't just glow, it pulsed. A modulation, a carrier wave. Nature creates noise. Pulsars spin and beep, but they do it with the regularity of a clock. They don't change their tempo. They don't encode complexity. The signal from 3IATLAS just changed its tempo. The latest packet from the Deep Space Network, processed just minutes before I started recording, shows that the infrared pulses are no longer random. They have structure. They have syntax. We are seeing a prime number sequence, and that is just the beginning. Because what the European Space Agency just found in the gravitational data, that is the piece of the puzzle that turns this from a curiosity into a crisis. Wait until you hear what happened next. Let me strip away the sensationalism for a moment and look at the raw physics. Because what we are seeing here violates the basic thermodynamic laws of a passive object in deep space. In astrophysics, we have a very simple rule, the Stefan-Boltzmann law. It tells us that every object radiates heat based on its temperature. A rock in the asteroid belt, bathed in sunlight, will reach maybe 150 to 200 Kelvin. But 3IATLAS is currently 2.6 astronomical units from the sun out there. The solar flux is weak. It is less than 15% of what we receive on Earth. Yet, as of 12 o'clock UTC today, JWST is measuring a surface temperature of 430 Kelvin. That is hotter than boiling water. That is hotter than the surface of Mercury at noon. Where is this energy coming from? There are only three natural possibilities. One, tidal heating, but there's no massive planet nearby to squeeze the object. Two, radioactive decay, but to reach 430 Kelvin, the object would have to be almost entirely made of uranium-235, which is statistically impossible in our galaxy. Three, a collision, but we have been watching it for months. It hit nothing. So we are left with the fourth option, the one that makes every astronomer nervous, internal power generation. The 3.8-micron band I mentioned earlier is critical. In industrial physics, 3.8 microns is the waste heat signature of high-efficiency radiators. It is the specific wavelength where certain advanced ceramics dump thermal energy most effectively into a vacuum. If you were building an interstellar probe and you needed to cool down your fusion drive or your antimatter containment after a long journey, you would design your radiators to emit exactly at this frequency. You would want to be stealthy in the visible spectrum, but you cannot hide your heat. Thermodynamics demands a toll. The fact that 3IATLAS is glowing in the infrared, but is almost invisible in the optical spectrum, suggests active stealth technology. It suggests a metamaterial surface designed to absorb radar and scatter light, while venting its internal heat through specific directed channels. Think about it this way. Imagine a stealth bomber flying at night. You cannot see it with your eyes. Radar might miss it, but if you have an infrared camera, you will see the hot exhaust of its engines. And that is exactly what JWST has found. We are seeing the exhaust of a functioning system, and the physics gets stranger. Yesterday at 1830 UTC, the European Space Agency's Gaia Observatory noticed a gravitational anomaly. Gaia maps the positions of stars with extreme precision. As 3IATLAS passed in front of a distant background star, the light from that star bent. We call this gravitational microlensing, but the bending was too strong. Based on its size, estimated at roughly 400 meters long, 3IATLAS should have a mass of about 20 million tons if it were made of rock. The lensing effect, however, suggests a mass 10 times greater. Or it suggests a warp in the local space-time metric. General relativity tells us that mass bends space. But advanced propulsion theories, like the Alcubierre drive concepts I've discussed in my books, suggest that you can bend space by manipulating negative energy density. If you contract space in front of you and expand it behind you, you can move without propellant. The lensing data from Gaia shows a distortion field that is not spherical. It is elongated, it is focused ahead of the object. This is not a rock with a heavy core. This is a mass concentration that defies the volume of the object itself. It implies a density that we only see in neutron stars, or in the theoretical energy densities of a warp bubble. I have spent my career looking for the fingerprints of a Type II civilization. We always assumed they would be Dyson spheres, or massive megastructures around stars. But maybe we were looking too big. Maybe the first sign is a probe, small and fast, manipulating gravity just enough to navigate the stars. The 8 micron heat, the impossible mass, the sudden stop in rotation, each of these on its own would be the discovery of the century. Together, they form a pattern that points to one conclusion: design. But here is where the story takes a turn that even I did not expect, because the signal, the one pulsing at prime number intervals, just stopped. At 4 o'clock UTC this morning, the signal cut out, silence. And then, exactly 47 minutes later, it came back. But it wasn't a pulse anymore. It was a stream, a continuous high bandwidth transmission aimed not at Earth, but at the sun. Why the sun? If you want to refuel a solar-powered craft, you go to the source. If you want to use a star as a gravitational slingshot, you aim for perihelion. But if you want to upload data to a network, you might use the sun as a gravitational lens to amplify your signal across the galaxy. We are watching 3IATLAS turn our own star into a transmitter. And the data packet it is sending, we have captured fragments of it, and the SETI Institute has been analyzing the carrier wave since 5 o'clock UTC. They haven't decoded the message, but they have analyzed the modulation. It is binary, it is digital, and the complexity of the bit stream suggests it is sending an image. A few hours ago, I received the preliminary visualization of that data stream. It is pixelated, it is noisy, but there is a shape forming in the static. And what that shape reveals changes everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. Up until this moment, everything I have shown you, the anomalies, the physics violations, the strange infrared heat, could still, in a desperate attempt to cling to the status quo, be argued as natural. Nature is full of surprises, and we are constantly rewriting the textbooks. But what happened at 14 o'clock UTC yesterday changes the conversation entirely. This is the moment where science fiction becomes science fact. The Green Bank Telescope in West Virginia, arguably the most sensitive radio telescope on Earth, intercepted a high-frequency burst from 3IATLAS. It wasn't just noise. It wasn't just a carrier wave. It was a structured repeating sequence of 1,679 pulses. If you know the history of SETI, that number should send a chill down your spine. In 1974, humanity sent the Arecibo message, a pixelated image of a human, our DNA, our solar system, and the Arecibo telescope itself into the cosmos. It was a grid of 1,679 bits. We chose that number because it is the product of two prime numbers, 23 and 73. It was a mathematical key, a way to say we are intelligent. We understand the language of the universe. Yesterday, 3IATLAS sent a message back, and the bit count was exactly 1,679. Think about the odds. The probability of a random, natural radio burst containing exactly that number of pulses is 1 in 4 1.7 billion. It is statistically impossible, but it gets worse or better depending on how you look at it. When astronomers at the Breakthrough Listen project took that binary string and arranged it into the same 23 by 73 grid as the original Arecibo message, an image emerged. It was not random static. It was a deliberate modification of our own message. Where the Arecibo message showed a human figure, the 3IATLAS response shows a different structure. It is taller. It has a larger head relative to its body. Where our message showed the double helix of DNA, their message shows a triple helix. Where our message highlighted Earth as the third planet from the Sun, their message highlights the fourth planet, Mars. Pause and let that sink in. We sent a greeting card into the void 50 years ago, and now something has answered. It has taken our format, our logic, and used it to describe itself. This is not a wow signal that lasts for 72 seconds and vanishes. This is a conversation. The implications of this are staggering. If 3IATLAS is an ancient probe, it might have been listening to our radio leakage for decades. It waited until it was close enough to reply with zero latency. It knows we are here. It knows our biology, and based on the modifications to the DNA structure, it is telling us that life, complex, intelligent life, is not unique to Earth. But there is a darker interpretation. The fact that it highlighted Mars suggests a history we have yet to uncover. Is it pointing to a dead civilization? Is it a warning? Or is it a destination? And just when the astronomical community was trying to process this image, the object did something else. At 16:15 UTC, while the data was still being decrypted, 3IATLAS changed course again. But this time, it didn't just drift. It executed a 90-degree turn. In orbital mechanics, a 90-degree turn at 30 kilometers per second requires an immense amount of energy. It requires inertial dampening technology that we cannot even build in a lab. It implies manipulation of gravity fields on a scale we only dream about. And where is it heading now? It is no longer on a trajectory out of the solar system. It has entered a capture orbit around the sun. And this object is not leaving, it is parking. The Pentagon has briefed the White House. The European Space Agency has called an emergency session. The data I am sharing with you is being analyzed by the brightest minds on the planet, and the consensus is shifting rapidly from anomaly to artifact. We are no longer looking for life. Life has found us. And the final piece of data, the one that has not been released to the public yet, that is the one that keeps me up at night. Because as 3IATLAS settled into its new orbit, it began to emit a new signal, a countdown. So here we are. It is February 22nd, 2026, and let's establish what we know with absolute certainty. We have an object, 3IATLAS, that is glowing with the intense 3.8 micron heat of an active power source. We have measured its unnatural trajectory, a precise 90-degree turn that defies inertia. We have intercepted a structured intelligence signal, a 1679-bit reply to our own Arecibo message. And now it has parked itself in a stable orbit around our sun. These are not theories. These are documented observations from the world's most advanced instruments. But one question remains unanswered. One question that the scientific consensus carefully avoids. Why the countdown? Because the signal changed again at 18 o'clock. UTC, it is no longer a complex image. It is a simple rhythmic pulse, but the frequency is increasing every hour. The gap between pulses shrinks by exactly 0.6 seconds. And if you plot that curve, if you extrapolate that acceleration, it leads to a singularity. It leads to a specific moment in time. Aprilimas 2026. What happens on April 5th? Is it an arrival? Is it a transmission? Or is it something else entirely? If this is a probe from a Type 2 civilization, it might be preparing to harvest energy. It might be waiting for reinforcements. Or, perhaps, it is simply waiting for us to respond. The silence from official channels is deafening. But the data speaks volumes. We are not alone. We never were. And for the first time in human history, we have the coordinates of someone else in the out room. The telescopes are pointed. The detectors are live. The data stream is active. Every second that ticks by brings us closer to that 0 point. And whatever 3IATLAS is, whether it is a visitor, a relic, or a warning, we are about to find out.